Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to All Praise Picks. Today we're looking at the NFL on Christmas Day. We have the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day, December 25th, 2024. Currently, the Chiefs are 14-1, which is first place in the AFC West, and the Steelers are 10-5, which is first place in the NFC North. But they have lost their last two games, them being the Steelers, and this is a pretty big game for both teams. I believe the Chiefs could lock up the number one seed if they win this game, and the Steelers could stay on top of the AFC North, battling against the Ravens, who have the same record as them and are playing later today um, for their division crown. And the Chiefs are also favored in this game. I know that Mike Tomlin, as an underdog, is a pretty good bet overall and is a winning bet throughout history, but uh, I do think this will be a close game. It's hard to decide who will win the game, especially with it being on Christmas. But I do have a lot of parlays for you guys. I think I have a pretty good understanding of how the offenses will play in this one. Um, and as always, I'll break down the lines, give you my thoughts on the parlays that I have, as well as a few leans that I have. And hopefully, if you tap in, we can all win. So these first two parlays are focused on Russell Wilson and his stats. So the Steelers will have George Pickens back in this game. He missed the last couple of games with a hamstring injury, but with George Pickens back in the offense, Russell Wilson has been passing the ball a lot more, and I do think that he'll have over 200 passing yards in this game. So in the parlay on the left side at plus 115, I took him for 200 passing yards and over 21 completions. And then on the right side at plus 120, I have him for over 200 passing yards and over 32 passing attempts. And I like both of these parlays, especially since George Pickens is back in the game. He's a big play receiver and the leading receiver for the Steelers. And in the games that George Pickens has played in, Russell Wilson has gone over 200 yards in each of those games except for one game against Washington, which he had 195 yards, so just 5 yards under. And I think with the Steelers being projected to lose this game and likely losing this game in the third or fourth quarter, they'll have to pass the ball. And I think that Russell Wilson should be able to have over 200 passing yards. Also on the season, the Chiefs defense is 17th in terms of their passing yards allowed. So kind of middle of the pack, but also third in the NFL in rushing yards allowed. So they're a really good run defense and have shown vulnerabilities in pass defense. So I do like Russell Wilson's chances of having over 200 passing yards. And in terms of his attempts and completions, so in games that George Pickens has played in, he's had over 21 completions in uh, four out of the last five games with George Pickens, as well as over uh, 30 attempts in three out of those five games. So I do think that he has a good chance of having over 21 completions, and those completions will probably go towards George Pickens and Pat Fryermuth, who I'll get to later in the video. But also, I like the other parlay at plus 120, just having passing attempts because he could have a lot of incompletions in this game, but still catch a parlay as long as he's throwing the ball. So at plus 115 and plus 120, I put one unit in both these parlays for 115 and 120 potential percent return on investment. As always, have bankroll management and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. So these next two parlays are focused on Mahomes as well as the running backs. I do like Kareem Hunt more in this game, and I'll have a few more parlays for him later in this video, but I took Isaiah Pacheco to have over 50 rushing yards and for Mahomes to have over 200 passing yards at plus 185, as well as for Kareem Hunt to have over 40.5 total rushing and receiving yards, as well as two receptions, and Mahomes to have over 200 passing yards in this game. I do lean towards Kareem Hunt more because he has had more playing time, especially since Pacheco was out during due to injury. But what I like about Kareem Hunt is that he was the running back that actually closed out the game versus the Houston Texans in their last game about a week ago. So I think that Andy Reid favors Kareem Hunt as their lead running back, and Isaiah Pacheco can make a lot of big plays, but he does have fumbling issues. And I think that Andy Reid just trusts Kareem Hunt more, which will lead to Kareem Hunt having more playing time and more possibilities to have it over 41 and a half or 40 and a half rushing and receiving yards, as well as two receptions. Looking deeper at Isaiah Pacheco's stats, so since returning from injury, he did go over 50 rushing yards versus the Chargers, but has played two pretty tough run defenses in the Texans and Cleveland. Um, but I think it's just a matter of him having the rushing attempts. And the Steelers, they are a pretty good run defense, but I think that they can give up the big play, especially to guys like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, like they've done in the past two games. So I like the odds at plus 185 for Pacheco to have over 50 rushing yards, but I really like Kareem Hunt more to have over 41 rushing and receiving yards because it's a combination of stats as well as the receptions with it, which I think will come because the Steelers um, are allowing the seventh most receptions of over 20 yards this season and are bottom 10s in terms of receiving yards allowed to receivers as well as to running backs. So yeah, plus 220 and at plus 185, I think it's just pretty good odds for half unit on each of these parlays. As always, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you decide to place it with me. Now taking a deeper look at Kareem Hunt at plus 130, I have him for over 40 and a half rushing receiving yards, like I mentioned before, as well as over 7 receiving yards. And on the parlay on the right side at plus 180, I have him just for 2 receptions instead of over 7 receiving yards. And I do think that he just has a really good matchup here. In his last 2 games versus the Steelers when he played for the Chiefs previously, he had over 80 and 110 total rushing and receiving yards in those games, and did go over 2 receptions in the game that he had over 110 total rushing and receiving yards. So I think that Andy Reid has used him in a similar way in the past and will probably do so in this game, given that he is a very versatile back and I think is just more trusted than Isaiah Pacheco at this time. He's also had over 1 reception in his last 5 games and over 2 receptions in 3 out of those 5 games. And he honestly is a big play guy, so especially in the receiving area. Like versus Houston, he had 2 receptions for 24 yards, but one of those receptions was a really big play, I think, on 3rd down. So I think Mahomes trusts him, and he's just able to find open spaces, especially in the clutch. He's also gone over 41 rushing and receiving yards in his last 2 games, and I think with increased usage, he'll have a good chance of doing so in this game. So at plus 130 and plus 180, I put half a unit on both these parlays for potential 130 and 180% return on investment. As always, have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. So these next few parlays that I have are focused on the receivers. I really do like George Pickens, especially given the amount of rest he had and him returning. I think that Russell Wilson will try to find him early and often, which will lead to him having over 50 receiving yards. And the Chiefs on the season, like I mentioned, are 17th in terms of pass defense. And just last week versus Nico Collins and Tank Dell, they got pretty much like torched. Even after Tank Dell left due to an unfortunate injury, Nico Collins was still able to produce, and their tight end Dalton Schultz was able to produce as well. So I do like Pickens and Pat Freiermuth for the Steelers to have good receiving yards in this game. But in terms of the receivers for the Chiefs, I do like DeAndre Hopkins the most. I think because the Steelers play man-to-man coverage and pretty much a single high coverage the entire time, D-Hop is just great against man coverage. And similar receivers to D-Hop, in terms of man coverage beaters, like A.J. Brown on December 15th had 8 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy, who's pretty good against man coverage, on December 8th had 5 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, great man coverage beaters, Jamar Chase had 6 for 86 and a touchdown, as well as T. Higgins had 5 for 69 and a touchdown. And I think that D-Hop, as well as Hollywood Brown to some extent, but Hollywood Brown just returned from injury, so I do trust D-Hop more just to have more playing time. And I think that D-Hop and Hollywood Brown, as well as Travis Kelce, have the best matchups in this game. So at plus 230, I took Pickens to have over 50 receiving yards and D-Hop to have over 4 receptions. And at plus 333, I have Pickens and D-Hop to both go for 50 receiving yards. And I think that in terms of, just to add more detail for D-Hop's receptions, it's a pretty solid play overall. He's had over 4 receptions in his last 5 games, and the target share should be there, especially since they're playing a lot of man coverage. So at plus 230, I put a little bit more than half a unit on both of these parlays, actually, for a 230 and a 330% return on investment. As always, just have bankroll management, understanding your finances when deciding to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. Now looking at Hollywood Brown. So in this parlay at plus 155, I have him for over 4 receptions and 25 receiving yards, as well as Pickens to have over 50 receiving yards. I do like his matchup as well. He is pretty good against man coverage. I think that DeAndre Hopkins is just better against man coverage, but in his first game back, Hollywood Brown had 5 receptions for 45 yards, and he only played in 20 snaps but had 8 targets. Now I think that could be a matter of just getting increased film on him and seeing how he responds to different play calls and stuff. But it also just could be because like they really need him in this offense as like the Rishi Rice type of receiver, and are trying to just get him as involved in the offense as soon as possible. So in his second game, I just lean more towards Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins because they've played more snaps, and um, it could kind of go both ways with Hollywood Brown, whether he continues to have such a high um, target share, or if it's just a matter of just seeing what he has on film and then deciding what to do in this game. But at plus 155, I put a little bit less than half a unit on this one, and think he has a pretty good chance of going over 25 receiving yards. He probably could get that off of 2 catches, but his receptions is kind of something that I'm hesitant on because he had such a high target share, only playing 20 snaps in the game, which is very unlikely for him to have about a target every 2 snaps he plays. But like I mentioned, the Steelers, they're not that good against man-to-man beaters for like speedy wide receivers and things like that. So at plus 155, put half a unit on it for potential 155% return on investment. And I'm excited to see how he plays. So this is the next parlay I have at plus 185. I have Travis Kelce for over 50 receiving yards and George Pickens for over 50 receiving yards. Looking at Travis Kelce, so the Steelers are kind of middle of the pack in terms of defending the tight end position. And I think this could just be a pretty big game for Travis Kelce, who does play well in primetime games, as well as is like one of Mahomes' favorite targets. So he has over 4 receptions in his last 5 games, and he did go over 45 yards in 3 out of those 5 games. And I think it's just a matter of him getting the amount of targets in this game. And while I do think that Hopkins and potentially Hollywood Brown will get more targets because they are pretty good man-to-man beaters, Travis Kelce is just a great safety valve for Patrick Mahomes, and I think he could really show out, especially with this being a Christmas Day game. So at plus 185, I put a little bit more than half a unit on that parlay for 185% return on investment. And per usual, just have bankroll consciousness to understand your finances when deciding to place these bets if you do decide to place it with me. So these were some higher odd parlays that I also placed half a unit on each of them. So once again, I have Pickens for over 50 receiving yards, Hopkins for over 4 receptions, and Hopkins and Kelce to have over 25 receiving yards each. And I do lean towards that parlay hitting more than the parlay on the right side at plus 320 for Hopkins for over 4 receptions and 25 receiving yards, Kelce for over 25 receiving yards, and Pat Freiermuth for over 25 receiving yards. Freiermuth, he's a pretty good tight end for the Steelers and fits their system well, especially as a run blocker. But I think that with how good the Chiefs are against the run, I don't know how many snaps he's actually going to play. And he's only gone on over 25 receiving yards in 3 out of his last 5 games, but he hasn't gone over it in his last 2 games. And granted, those last 2 games, George Pickens wasn't playing. So it's kind of like, is it a matter of Pickens being on the field that opens things up for Freiermuth, or is it a matter of the run game that opens things up for Freiermuth? I think it's a mix of both, and I do think that he has a better chance of having over 25 receiving yards with Pickens being on the field. He's also gone over 3 receptions in his last 5 games, so as long as he gets 3 receptions, I think it's a good chance of going over 25 receiving yards, especially since the Chiefs are not really that good of a defense against tight ends. So I put half a unit on both these parlays at plus 300 and plus 320 for a 300 and 320 potential percent return on investment. Per usual, just have bankroll consciousness, understanding your finances when deciding to place these bets if you decide to place it with me. And then these are the last 2 parlays that I placed, and then I'm going to include some leans at the end of this video. But at plus 200, I have Freiermuth for over 25 receiving yards and Kelce for over 50 receiving yards. And at plus 350, I have Freiermuth for over 25 and D-Hop for over 50. And put just about half a unit on both these parlays. I think if things open up for Freiermuth, he has a good chance of having over 25 receiving yards. And as I mentioned before, I trust Kelce and D-Hop to get over their receiving yards more than Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy in this game. But at plus 200 and plus 350, it's just pretty good returns on investment overall at 200% and 350% potentially. So before I go into the long shot parlay as well as my leans for this game, be sure to like, comment on the video, as well as share and subscribe to my channel. Appreciate you guys for watching. Really just do this for the enjoyment of sports investments, and hopefully a few of these can hit, but here are the long shot parlays and a few leans that I have. So here's a long shot parlay that I have. I honestly don't really think this is a long shot. It's just for Russell Wilson to have over 200 passing yards and to throw an interception, as well as Mahomes to have over 200 passing yards and to not throw an interception. I think that Mahomes has been playing pretty well, especially since his game versus the Bills, where he had 2 interceptions. Since then, he has not thrown an interception in the last 5 weeks, and I think with Russell Wilson having the addition of George Pickens, it'll probably lead to him taking more riskier chances, and ultimately leading to an increased potential of throwing an interception in this game, especially with the Steelers potentially losing this game and not leading in the third or fourth quarter. It'll lead to more pass attempts from Russell Wilson and less from Patrick Mahomes. So I just think that the odds of Russell Wilson throwing an interception is higher than Patrick Mahomes. And I do like their odds of both going over 200 passing yards, because I do think this will be a relatively high scoring game, because both defenses can be vulnerable to the pass. But at plus 425, I put half a unit on this parlay for a 425% return on investment. As usual, just have bankroll management, understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets, if you do decide to place it with me. So these are a few lean parlays that I had that I did place and then ended up cashing out to place the other bets that I had in this video. So Najee Harris under 12 rushing attempts. I think that he will for sure get at least 8 rushing attempts in this game, but if he isn't successful from rushing the ball, he will probably go under 12. I just don't like to bet under rushing attempts, because he could have like one big run and then that could lead to him just getting 3 additional carries just to see if he could pop another one off. But at plus 110, it's pretty good like value play overall, in my opinion, because the Chiefs are the 3rd ranked rushing defense in the NFL. I also took Russell Wilson. Well, I was going to take Russell Wilson for 13 rushing yards, as well as 200 passing yards and 13 rushing yards, and as well as George Pickens for 50 receiving yards. But I stayed away from it because I think if Russell Wilson's able to pass the ball effectively, I think that he won't try to scramble as much. And he did go over 13 rushing yards in his last 3 games, but those were without George Pickens. And with George Pickens, he hasn't gone over 13 rushing yards in any game. So I just think that he probably will be passing the ball more than trying to run the ball. And I do like Russell Wilson for over 200 passing yards and George Pickens for over 50, but I stayed away from it just primarily because of Russell Wilson's lack of rushing when George Pickens is on the field. These are other 2 lanes that I had focused on Hollywood Brown as well as Xavier Worthy. I think that either one of these receivers for the Chiefs could have really good games, but I think there's just regression coming from Xavier Worthy. He's had over 11 targets in his last 2 games apiece, and I think that with the addition of Marquise or Hollywood Brown into the lineup, he probably will take target share away from Xavier Worthy before he does from DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce, who have been on the field for over 75% of the snaps, respectively, for each player. So I'm kind of staying away from Xavier Worthy in this game just to see how he plays with Hollywood Brown. But I do think George Pickens could have over 50 receiving yards in this game. And then it's the same thing here. Freiermuth, I think, could have a good game, but he hasn't shown it lately. And Xavier Worthy for over 56.5 rushing and receiving yards. I think it's a good value play overall, but I could easily see the Steelers limiting the speedster wide receivers like they've done against Tyreek Hill in the past when these two teams have played. So those are all the parties I have in this video, as well as my long shot and a few links that I had just to add more context to my research. But appreciate you guys for watching. Be sure to like and comment on this video, as well as share and subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned for more NBA and NFL videos coming out later today, and hope you guys have happy holidays. Until next time, peace.